Good morning, everyone. Today we're checking out a brand new video from PopCross Studios of turning public domain characters into horror characters. Welcome back to the realm of hopeful horrors. Let's hop in.
I need your help. In the comment section, I would love as many ideas as you have for characters that I could adapt that are either public domain or concepts that nobody owns. Things like animals, dinosaurs, phobias, food, zodiac signs. But preferably more stuff that I haven't used on this channel before. See, this new series that I'm ramping up that you're watching right now, The Realm of Hopeful Horrors, is inspired by things like the Backrooms and the SCP Foundation, and everything that I create in it is immediately becoming public domain. So if you like any of the lore, creatures, characters, whatever, you're free to use them without asking my permission in your own movies, books, or whatever. But that obviously also means that whatever I adapt into this has to be public domain or nobody owns the rights to it in the first place. Because if I tried to do like a scary version of Charizard and then told people that was public domain, that obviously wouldn't be true. For today's episode...
Actually, I did just watch an episode of American Dads where they had to use public domain characters for a Space Jam. Yeah, you could use olive oil as bread or castor oil. You could use a clown. I can't remember the character's name. It's like Poco or Polo or something like that. And you could even use Frankenstein. But it would have to be a Frankenstein without bolts in the neck. Because that's the one that's copyrighted by Universal.
So I've got some...
I think.
Fun public domain characters to work with, who have all become public domain within the last 5 years or so. But again, I would love any more ideas that you have in the comments. Thank you in advance, but for now, let's get into this episode of The Realm of Hopeful Horrors.
Let's go! Hit like if you want. Subscribe if you feel like it. By the way, enjoy the show. Welcome back to The Realm.
Walter McKay sat in his tattered pajamas against a cold rock in the wet sand. His failed attempt at building a fire still sat before him, taunting him. Part of him wanted to scream out in fury and frustration, but he couldn't muster the anger. He was just drained, even more so than he'd felt in his old life, before he'd somehow been dragged into unreasonable reality, as that strange woman had called it on his first day here 2 weeks ago. He wondered if he could convince his body to get up and try one more time to make it to the top of the mountain. But then wondered, what's the point? No matter where he went, no matter what he did, one of those things was always going to be in his way, and he did not want to die again. Every time he thought about his first death, it was as if it was happening all over again. He still had no clue how he'd gotten here. He had literally just blinked, sitting up in his bed, exhausted, scrolling through comments and posts from other exhausted artists, talking about how AI was rapidly eroding any hope new aspiring animators and illustrators like him had of making a career out of their passions. And one blink later, he was on this island, on a beach in the musty air of this horrible waking nightmare. The woman, or the thing that had appeared to him, hadn't been any real help, as she likely thought herself to be. Showtime, as she called herself.
Oh, look at the hat.
Though not from him asking her name. She didn't actually answer any of the terrified questions he'd had. In fact, he'd been in such a panicked state when he first arrived that he had a hard time remembering everything she'd said, and she'd never returned. The thing that stuck with him most was the only thing she'd actually given him. This stupid rock in his pocket. She'd held one hand out towards him and raised one into the air, and then it had just appeared. She seemed pleased to see it, calling it a rune of recurrence. She said it would make his resurrections all occur in a consistent place, which I guess she thought was good for him. She also said he could get home simply by placing the stone on a platform at the top of the mountain. She pointed to the mount at the center of the island he'd appeared on. He turned to look at it as she said,
"You can do this, Walter. Please don't end up like Christopher."
He turned back to hopelessly ask what that meant, but she was just gone. He went through an hour of panic and confusion, but eventually had decided he might as well try to do what she said. He headed inland through a forest, his heart practically cracking his ribs with each pounding beat as he saw looming figures, shadows darting and rummaging through the thicket, never quite close enough to see. Eventually, as a leering set of eyes fell on him, he broke into an all-out sprint, which eventually had to turn into an exhausted jog as he moved for over an hour, until he reached another shoreline. This one ran along a wide lake. He was a good swimmer, but there was no way he was
okay.
going to wade into this blackish purple water and risk getting pulled under.
Like
he could see
ink?
across the lake, but not to any ends on his left or right, so walking around it could take ages. But when he was looking for alternative routes, he spotted something. A dock and a steamboat.
Oh,
he had no idea
perfect.
if he could trust
Steamboat
any person
Willie.
he met here, but he could see there was a person readying up to set off, so he ran for it. Unfortunately, as he got closer to the dock, the scale of this person struck him, and Walter realized it wasn't a person at all.
Nope.
It was some sort of bulky
It's a
humanoid
mouse.
cat. He had nearly reached the dock, but skidded to a halt and considered running away. The figure
Wait, cat? Oh, he must be talking about Bluto.
spotted him, and he wanted to run even more, but just froze. The figure looked him up and down, then waved him towards the ship with a snarl. The Catman grudgingly stomped onto the ship, turning back to see that Walter hadn't started following him. He then growled louder and waved again. Walter didn't know what to do. But then a rumbling roar bellowed out of the woods behind him, and he didn't need more motivation than that to run
It's like,
onto
yeah,
the boat.
okay, onto the
The
boat.
Catman must have been 600 pounds and 8 feet tall. His eyes pierced Walter as he looked down at him, and Walter started feeling like he'd made the wrong choice. There were other animals on this boat, but these ones weren't humanoid like the Catman. They were like mutated black and white versions of animals he'd seen back in what he figured must be considered reasonable reality, the real world where he was from. The Catman suddenly
Yeah,
pulled
just,
a knife out of his belt, and Walter immediately turned to run. A heavy paw-like hand fell on his shoulder and turned him back around. Walter was sure the blade was headed for his gut or his neck.
Nope.
But instead, the Catman had grabbed the blade and was handing him the handle.
like,
He then
"Take
pointed
it."
Walter to a pile of foul, moldy-looking potatoes. The
You'll kill
Catman
him.
then just grunted. He pulled up the plank and headed up a set of stairs to the helm to set off across the water.
Oh, I get what he's saying. He's pretty much saying, no one rides for free. You want to get across this lake? You're going to be peeling potatoes till we get there.
Walter figured this
I can respect
being
that.
couldn't speak or answer questions, but a part of him was somewhat comforted by the idea that this at least seemed like it was some kind of even trade. Peel some gross veggies and get a free ride. He sat facing away from all the bizarre animals leering at him, but then he realized it was even more uncomfortable not knowing what they were doing, so he turned to face them with his back pressed against the wall and kept going. The boat moved far slower than he hoped, and yet Walter had no idea if he could actually finish peeling by the time they arrived. There were so many of these potatoes.
Well,
Every
how
time
many are
he
you
looked
meant
at the
to peel?
pile, it seemed like there were even more. Was he expected to get all of them done? What's worse, sometimes he'd start peeling one and it would just crumble to dust in his hands. Could he get in trouble
Ooh,
for that?
that's
Was he
bad.
doing something wrong? Part of him wanted to just jump overboard and swim the rest of the way, but he could see fins skimming along the surface of the water in the distance. Something was in there. He
Yeah.
just didn't know if it was worse than what was on this boat.
Just stay on the boat.
Suddenly, there was a yelp and a loud splash. Walter leapt up and looked over the side, seeing the Catman splashing around, trying to keep himself afloat in the water. Had he fallen in? Should Walter save him? He looked around for a life raft, only to see that all of the ghoulish animals had started cowering. They pressed themselves against the walls of the ship, shaking in terror, looking at the stairs as a grinning demonic mouse man skipped all too eagerly down onto the deck.
There it is. Steamboat Willie. The very first Mickey Mouse.
A horrendous mouse
Winnie
panned
the
his
Pooh.
eyes across
Okay,
the deck
that's gonna be interesting.
before locking onto a gangly goose. He bounded over to it. The creature tried to scramble away, but he leapt on it and clutched its neck with one hand, squeezing its body under his other arm. With a treacherous chuckle, he yanked the goose's neck out and squished its body against him with his elbow. A sound bellowed out of it like a blend of a caw and horribly played bagpipes, as if this goose had an instrument stuck inside its body.
Ow,
The sound was
that's
dreadful
painful.
as the mouse leapt around, continuing to torment the animal. Walter didn't know what to do. He looked over the side of the boat again, just to see a tentacle splash up from the water, wrap around the burly Catman, and drag him under.
Oh no,
Going
Bluto.
overboard was off the table. Unfortunately, when Walter turned back toward that mouse, it had stopped playing its living instrument, and with its head tilted at a disturbing angle, it was leering at him. It dropped the goose. Walter ran towards the stairs, not knowing where he could go, but just feeling the need to go anywhere. but the mouse was surprisingly agile and even stronger. It grabbed him and pinned him to the ground with its knee. It then started smacking him in the back of the head as if trying to play him like a drum. His face was smashed into the wooden floor, sending a spurt of blood onto his pajamas. He yelled for it to get off him, thrashing in terror. It seemed for a second like it might have listened. But instead, as it got up, it just wrapped its claw around his neck, lifting him up, and began pounding his stomach with its other hand. Wheezing yelps and groans puffed out of Walter, and the monstrosity seemed to enjoy the sound.
Oh.
It danced around, continuing to strike
So
him
much
while
pain.
choking the life out of him. Walter tried kicking to no effect. He tried to hold himself up to breathe, but the grip around his neck was too tight. Spots started to speckle his vision, and his stomach and ribs ached more and more with every strike. Every sensation surging through his body was horrible, and he just wanted it to end. And soon, it did. Walter's vision went black, then instantly cleared, and he leapt to his feet, back on the beach. He looked around in confusion and terror, taking in deep gasps of air, which was surprisingly easy. His body felt completely fine now, but he did still have those spurts of blood splashed across his shirt. Showtime's words about resurrections flashed in his mind. She said all of them would occur in a consistent place. So, anytime he died, he'd return to this beach?
Apparently.
That idea wasn't really comforting. It implied he was going to have to go through something like that horrible attack multiple times. Still, Walter wanted out more badly than before. Mentally, he was exhausted, but he pushed on anyway.
Yeah,
He sped
you gotta
through
get
the
the hell
forest,
out of
and
here.
when he got to the shoreline of that lake, he got back within the tree line and started moving around it. He popped out of the tree line a few times just to see more lake. How long could it possibly be? Was there a chance it circled the entire mountain? Was there no way to avoid going across the water? The idea of getting on that boat again made his stomach churn. He kept moving until his legs became exhausted, then went further still. He could swear he made it around the entire island, but had no way of knowing. Eventually, he slumped down against a tree and finally let himself rest, just to once more see a pair of eyes leering at him through the dark of the woods.
Oh,
He
come
just
on.
pressed his body harder against the tree as if that could help. He didn't want to move anymore. The figure got closer and closer, until he realized it was just a boy, looking only around 15 years old.
Boy?
But his skin was a pale golden color, almost looking slimy and translucent.
Christopher
In
Robin.
contrast, his eyes were black, other than piercing white pupils that stared holes through Walter as the figure approached. Walter managed to stand up, feeling
It's a Christopher Robin whale-bell.
slightly comforted by how much taller he was than the boy. Who are you? Can you talk? Walter asked anxiously. The figure stopped approaching and just stared at him for a moment, then finally said,
Just give up.
"What do you mean trying
Just
to get up the
give
mountain?"
up?
Getting out of here. Just give up. There will always be a horror in your way. They'll always stop you. They'll always find you. They'll always kill you, but if you stop trying, they'll kill you less.
Walter's heart started pounding so fast it was
Okay.
like a constant buzz.
Get the hell away from this kid.
"Are you Christopher?" Before the boy could answer, the ground started to shake. The boy's lip began to tremble.
When he finishes you off faster if you don't fight back.
A bear with golden slime drooling out of its mouth and a balloon tied to its back thundered through the woods and tackled the boy to the ground, chomping
Damn, I thought it would have been a whale-bell. That would have been better, cool in my
into him
opinion.
and lashing him around with its fangs. Splashes of sticky slime splattered Walter. He started backing away, still watching in terror as the boy just melded in with the honey pouring out of this bear's maw. It then raised its head to the sky and roared, spitting out more goo, before sniffing the air and turning its head towards Walter.
Oh, crap.
He turned and started to run, but barely made it a few steps. When the first slash of claws struck his back, he hoped that would end him quickly. But when the
Nope.
first bite pierced through his shoulder, he couldn't take the boy's advice. It was too painful to not try getting away. He tried to scramble off, and that did just make it take longer. After that second death, Walter took a full day to just sit on the beach, trembling. He tried to fall asleep, but couldn't. He tried calling for Showtime to come find him again. He tried
Damn it, Showtime,
chucking
where
away
are
his
you?
rune of recurrence and anger, but the second it hit the ground, it would just reappear in his hand or in his pocket. The next day, he had enough energy to try going back again. He didn't even make it to the lake this time before Winnie found him again and sent him back to the beach. He waited
Damn,
another
Winnie.
2 days after that, then made it to the lake and tried walking around it in the opposite direction from the last time. Instead of Winnie, a tiger found him, one with similar
Oh,
patchwork
no.
skin to the bear. It tore him to shreds just as ruthlessly. It seemed like the boy had been right. There would always be one of those horrors in his way.
So does that mean that the next one up is gonna be? Oh, okay. I was not expecting that character. And honestly, it's gonna be one of my favorites.
Quick interruption to say that if you like my art and you want to color some of it yourself, you might want to check out my 3 PopCross Studios coloring books that I currently have out. And huge thank you to the people that have shown off some of the art that they've colored in those books in the
Ooh.
reviews up on Amazon. Alternatively, if you want
Love
the
the
art from
quality
this episode as
of
posters,
colors.
I've put all 3 of the drawings up as posters on the PopCross Studios Teespring store, along with tons of other posters and stickers and sweaters and stuff. All that's linked in the description. Now back into the story. Walter couldn't
And
bring
here we are with Popeye the Sailor Man. He does what he can because he eats his spinach.
himself to try again. He couldn't face another death. He found a bunch of boulders on the beach that made up a makeshift camp, and he just sat there. The water of the vast ocean seemed to be drinkable, and he didn't appear to be getting hungry other than out of habit. But waiting around wasn't getting him any closer to freedom, back to his life. He started thinking about how cruel it was that
I'll be honest, I actually didn't know that Popeye had entered the public domain. Though then again, the one that eats the spinach probably hasn't, considering this just looks like a regular sailor guy.
his problems here
Excluding the weird biceps.
felt even more hopeless than his ones back home. He'd wanted to be an illustrator or animator his whole life. He'd started building a YouTube channel a few years back with the intention to teach people how to draw cartoons. But then there was talk of something called COPA being implemented on YouTube, and all the videos Walter watched about it talked about how it would destroy art channels because anything remotely child-friendly would get flagged as for kids, and you wouldn't be able to make any money off them.
Oh,
So
I remember that
he gave
act.
up on that idea.
Was terrible.
When it was implemented, it turned out it wouldn't have affected his channel at all, but then he started seeing videos about how it was too late to get successful on YouTube because the competition was too fierce.
It's never
So
too late.
He was once again deterred. Finally, he
The
decided
only point where it becomes too late is when you give up on yourself. Never give up, keep pushing forward, and you can do it.
to go to school to be an animator, to work at a company like Pixar or DreamWorks. It took him a few years to build up a portfolio to apply with, and by the time he did, AI-generated art and animations had started becoming more prevalent.
Okay,
His
now
whole
it's a little
newsfeed
late.
became filled with people saying how AI was going to ruin all animation jobs. So he scrapped his portfolio and had given up. He decided there was always going to be something in his way, so he might as well face facts. He'd never have the career he wanted.
Now it's troublesome.
2 weeks into being on this beach, while he was curled up in a ball, drained and unsure of what to do, as if things couldn't get worse, he heard thumping footsteps on the beach. He cautiously looked over one of the rocks around him and immediately locked eyes with Winnie. It charged. He ran, but the bear was always faster. It reached him and did what it always did. He awoke from another death,
Another
and
death.
now Walter was furious enough to finally muster a yell. He dropped to his knees and screamed in fury, frustration, desperation. Every emotion came spilling out of him. He drooled and cried and panted. He hadn't even gone after the mountain, and death had still found him. It wasn't fair. The phrase repeated in his head, "There will always be something in my way. There will
Not
always
fail.
be
Not
something
fail.
in my
Not
way."
fail.
But then, something strange happened. He repeated it out loud again, but instead of making him feel more hopeless, it actually made him feel motivated. There will always be something in my way. He got to his feet and started marching straight into the woods. He got to the shoreline of the lake and headed for the docks, where he'd caught the first boat, unsure of what he'd do if he saw that horrid mouse. But there was actually another ship there, this one a sailing ship.
Nice.
This one only seemed to have one crew member. He was pale with a huge deformed nose and chin, massive bulging forearms, and piercing red eyes. Walter
That's
was
Popeye.
terrified, but marched up to the man anyway. "Are you sailing across the lake?" The man was a foot taller than Walter. He stepped closer to him and breathed a swell of foul smoke into Walter's face from a pipe he smoked.
Swab the deck. Don't touch me, Whiffle.
Before Walter could ask what
All right.
that meant, the man grabbed a mop and shoved it into his hand. He pointed at the deck of the ship.
Swab the deck.
He then pointed at a strange-looking chicken-like bird on the boat.
Don't touch me, Whiffle.
Walter guessed he understood, but he was ready for anything else to
Okay.
happen too. Maybe that
Clean the deck, don't touch the boat. Simple as that.
mouse would reappear here as well, but if it did, he already planned to snap the broom over his knee and use it as a wooden stake. He mopped the deck while the surprisingly nimble boatman sprang around the
Okay, hold on. If you are planning on snapping that wooden handle of the broom mop in half, you're gonna need a lot of strength to do that, and a really tough leg/knee.
ship, crewing the entire thing himself. They got nearly 3/4 of the way across the water. It seemed like Walter was actually going to make it, when he felt something brush against his leg.
Huh?
He looked down and saw the bird. Before he even processed what happened, he heard,
What the hell?
Don't touch me, Whiffle.
the man came stomping over. Walter tried to explain that it wasn't his fault, that he hadn't tried to, but before he got more than a few sentences out, a massive forearm and fist swung for his head, and he woke up
Duck.
back on the beach.
Nope.
He let out another cry
Son
of
of a-
rage, but repeated the phrase, "There will always be something in my way." He started stomping through the forest again. This time, before he reached shore, Winnie found him once more. He thought about running, but instead got curious about the balloon on the bear's back. He crouched low to the ground so
Can
that
you
when
pop
the bear
it?
lunged at him, it lunged low. He sprang up and managed to get onto its back and grab the balloon. He tried to yank it away, but the rope was too tight, so he tried to pop it and couldn't. Before he could do much
Damn it.
else, the beast slammed him into a tree and he fell off. Walter went limp, and this death did go by faster. Walter went through the woods again, and this time no Winnie, though he did hear that boy's voice calling out to him at one point.
You're doing this to yourself. It only leads to disappointment and pain. Just give up.
Yeah.
Walter ignored
Shut
him
up,
and got to
kid.
the lake again. This time, when Walter got to the dock, he saw both the steamboat and the sailing ship. The mouse was actually there on the deck with the sailor man, but the burly sailor man punched the mouse so hard in the head he flew back into the water. Walter assumed the mouse had touched the whiffle. Probably tried playing it like an instrument, too. It was pretty satisfying seeing that monstrosity
Thanks,
get thumped.
Popeye.
Walter confidently approached the sailor man, and before the pale being could speak, he said, "I'll swab the deck. I won't touch the whiffle." The man looked him up and
Won't touch
down,
the bud.
then shoved a mop into his hand. This time, Walter kept an eye on the bird. It was just puttering around the boat while he swept, until they got about 3/4 of the way across again. Then, out of nowhere, the bird started running at him.
Oh, no,
Walter
you don't.
tried quickly walking away from it at
Nope,
first,
nope,
but it was
nope,
fast enough
nope.
that he had to start running too.
Nope.
He kept checking to see if
Damn
they
it.
were at shore yet. They were getting closer, but not fast enough. He kept running and
I would have been like, "Hey, Captain, your bud is chasing me."
running, avoiding the bird, when out of nowhere the stupid thing bounded across the deck, flapping its wings to get farther than Walter anticipated, and it thudded its body against him.
Oh, damn
The
it.
fist striking his head came almost as fast, but at least this was the quickest way he'd find to die so far. He tried 2 more times and the whiffle kept getting him. The next time, Winnie found him on the way again too, but this time he bounded on top of the beast's back, and when it tried to slam him into a tree, he jumped up, holding the balloon and wedged it between a thick branch. He backed away, and the bear couldn't follow. It was stuck. The balloon's rope
Now
was
you
strong
got it.
enough to keep him there. Walter ran off, got to the water, and back to the boat. This time, when the whiffle started running for him, he got to the mast of the ship and clambered up it. The whiffle could flap its wings and get a bit off the ground, but
Yes.
not high enough to get him.
Climb.
They got to shore, and the sailor man inspected the deck.
Not shabby. Now get.
The whiffle followed after the sailor man as he got onto the new dock to tie the boat off.
Thanks,
Walter
Captain.
climbed down, got onto the dock, and looked up at the mountain. He'd made it across the water. He took a deep, confident breath, then felt something brush up against his leg.
Oh, come
He looked
on.
down at the whiffle. Oh, you little Those weren't the only challenges waiting to face Walter, and he wasn't always able to get Winnie's balloon stuck so easily on his following attempts. There were still plenty of times where it felt hopeless, like his progress was moving in reverse. Thankfully, it seemed like the deaths were getting less painful each time, and he grew more determined every time he did manage to get farther than before. By the time Walter reached the top of the mountain, He almost couldn't believe it.
I'm sorry, I can just imagine it. Like, he finishes the walk. He's standing there on the deck, looking up at the mountain. Then he feels it. He looks down, sees the pod. And I was like, why can't you just leave me alone? But before he can even finish that sentence, clock, eyes open, and he's back on the beach.
It felt so unceremonious. He tried to reach it so many times, and now he was just here. It was a simple, flat plane with the platform waiting in front of him. The platform looked like a simple stone table with a perfect indent for his rune to be placed. Part of him almost wanted to go back for Christopher, to tell that boy that it was doable. But
Forget the
he
kid.
was too
Get the hell
hurt
out.
and exhausted, and part of him worried this may not even be the end. He placed his runestone in, and the second it slid into place, Walter blinked and was standing in his bedroom.
Oh,
His pajamas
thank
were
God.
still bloodied and tattered, but his injuries were gone, and after 32 days, he was well and truly back home.
Just over a
Back
month.
in reasonable reality. His phone was still on, sitting on his bed, illuminated with a video of someone still saying how AI would ruin all art jobs. He grabbed the phone and shut it off with an exhausted but determined grin. Something will always be in my way, but that doesn't mean it gets to stop me forever.
Boom! That's how you do it. Now that's determination and how you keep pushing forward. Love it.
I honestly think I might do a full Winnie the Pooh episode because I've got a bunch of ideas that I really like. But
I
anyway,
like
if
it.
you enjoyed this, you might want to check out the pilot episode of The Realm of Hopeful Horrors, which is Cryptids in the Realm of Hopeful Horrors.
I
put
did.
that out about a year ago, but it is canon, if you can call anything canon in unreasonable reality. Or you might want to check out last week's episode of Shrek as a horror story. It's not
And I
set in the
did.
same series, but I do think it's a fun horror story. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or
inspiring note.
And the thought I want to leave people with today is the message from today's actual story. If you're an aspiring creative of any type and you've been dissuaded to go after your career by AI, know that even if AI vanished today, if laws were put in place that made generative AI completely illegal all across the world, within a couple weeks your mind would very likely latch onto something else and use that
Let's
as a
pick a new
reason
blockade,
to not go
yeah.
after what you want. So it's okay for your doubts to be there. You can let them be there. You just have to act in spite of them. There will always
yeah.
seem like there's something significant blocking your
Out of
path. But if
spite,
you decide
mother
you
effer.
have to, you will find a way around it or through it. I hope that's inspiring. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday. Goodbye.
And with that, we are done with today's episode. I hope you enjoyed this. Link to the original will be in the description below, and I'll see all of you next time when we flick back on. Till then, this is Fox, signing out. Peace.